They saw your reaction. That flicker in your eyes. That small change in your voice. That invisible, uncontrollable twitch that betrayed you. And in that single moment, they won. Not because they were stronger. Not because they were smarter. But because they found your trigger. That's how the game of power begins. Not with armies or weapons, but with your reaction. And make no mistake, in a world built on manipulation, the first man to react is always the first to lose. We live in an era where emotion has become a sport. Every word dissected, every opinion weaponized, every disagreement turned into war. The modern world doesn't thrive on reason, it thrives on offense. And that's why most people today are prisoners. Prisoners of their own emotions. One insult, and they explode. One disagreement, and they crumble. One opinion, and they go to war, not with strategy, not with purpose, but with emotion. They call it passion. They call it standing up for themselves. But Machiavelli would have called it what it truly is, slavery. Because to be offended is to be controlled. Every time you react, you give someone else the map to your mind. You tell them exactly where to strike next time. You hand them the remote control to your emotions. And that remote, that invisible power, becomes their greatest weapon against you. The world doesn't respect emotional people. It exploits them. It studies their reactions, their triggers, their fears, and then it uses those emotions as leverage. In the eyes of a manipulator, your feelings are currency. Your outrage, your insecurity, your hunger to be understood, these are all tools in the hands of those who know how to play the game. They don't need to fight you. They just need to provoke you. And once you take the bait, once you react, the game is already over. This is the secret Machiavelli understood centuries ago. Power isn't about strength. It's not about morality. It's about control. And the greatest control of all is emotional dominance. The ability to remain silent when insulted, to remain calm when provoked, to remain unreadable when attacked. Because in the silence of restraint lies the loudest form of strength. Let's face a brutal truth. The world is not fair. It's not gentle. It doesn't care about how you feel. You can cry, complain, or rage, but none of that changes the fact that emotions don't move the world. Only strategy does. And those who master their emotions rule those who cannot. When you react, you step out of command and into chaos. You go from being a ruler to being ruled. You stop playing chess and start being moved like a pawn. This is how people lose in relationships. This is how leaders lose nations. This is how individuals lose their freedom, one reaction at a time. The offended man believes he's fighting for honor. But Machiavelli would say he's handing over his crown. Because the man who can be offended can be controlled. The man who can be provoked can be predicted. And the man who can be predicted can be conquered. So ask yourself this question. What offends you? Is it rejection? Is it criticism? Is it being misunderstood? Good. Because now you know exactly where you are weak. Every time something offends you, it's revealing the part of you that still needs to be destroyed. And that's where the path to power begins, not with motivation, not with self-help slogans, but with death. The death of your sensitivity. The death of your emotional reactivity. The death of the part of you that craves to be validated. If you can kill that part, if you can detach from the need to react, then nothing and no one can control you. Because a man who cannot be offended cannot be manipulated. He becomes unpredictable, and unpredictability is the foundation of power. Most people spend their entire lives trying to defend their emotions. They demand respect, they demand understanding, they demand validation. But what they never realize is that this very demand is what enslaves them. Every time you demand something from the world, you admit that the world has power over you, that it has the ability to give or deny what you seek. And that's the exact moment you lose your freedom. Freedom doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from no longer needing it. When you no longer need to be liked, When you no longer need to be understood, when you no longer need to prove yourself, you rise above the battlefield. Because the world only controls those who seek control from it. In The Prince, Machiavelli warned rulers not to anger the masses unnecessarily. Not because of morality, but because emotion clouds strategy. And the same applies to you. When you get offended, you can no longer think clearly. Your emotions hijack your logic. And the moment that happens, someone else, the calm one, becomes your master. Understand this: the powerful do not fight with anger. They fight with calculation. They strike not when they're emotional, but when their opponent is. Because emotion creates blindness, and blindness creates opportunity. So when you feel that heat rising in your chest, that need to react, that's your signal. Not to strike, but to observe. Because silence disarms the manipulator. Indifference destroys the bait. And calmness that terrifies them. To be untouchable, you must master the art of stillness. You must become like stone, silent, steady, unreadable. When the world throws chaos your way, you respond with nothing. No flinch, no twitch, no reaction. Just calm observation. Because every time you refuse to react, you reclaim your power. Every time you stay silent, you become stronger. Every time you stay calm, you remind the world, I am not your puppet. Remember this truth: the first one to react always loses. The one who stays silent always controls. This is the first rule of power. This is the foundation of Machiavellian mastery. So burn the part of you that flinches. Kill the need to react. And rebuild yourself into something the world cannot move. Stay cold. Stay silent. Stay dangerous. Offense was not always a weapon. Once, it was a private wound, a quiet signal, telling you where you needed to grow stronger. It was personal, internal, a whisper that said, you are still fragile here. But the world changed. The rulers of today, not kings and queens, but corporations, media, and ideologues, discovered something extraordinary. Offense could be engineered. Sensitivity could be sold. And emotion could be weaponized. They realized that if they could make you feel offended, they could make you move. And if they could make you move, they could make you obey. That was the birth of modern control. Look around. You live in a world that doesn't just tolerate your emotions, it feeds on them. Social media thrives on outrage. News networks profit from division. Politics survives on emotional chaos. Because outrage sells. Because offense spreads. Because emotional people are predictable, and predictable people are easy to rule. This is not a coincidence. This is design. Machiavelli would have looked at our world today and smiled in dark admiration. He once wrote that rulers must keep the people busy with wars, festivals, or distractions so they would not have time to rebel. And today, the rulers have perfected that idea. They no longer need wars or festivals. They have something far more efficient: your emotions. They keep you busy being offended, busy fighting ghosts, busy attacking each other instead of seeing who truly holds the strings. Offense has become a business. Every emotional reaction you have, every click, every share, every furious comment fuels an invisible machine. You think you're expressing yourself, but in truth, you're performing exactly as programmed. Your outrage is measured. Your pain is monetized. Your attention is harvested. Every second you spend being offended, someone, somewhere, is profiting from it. And while you burn in digital wars, they build empires in silence. Think about it. When was the last time you truly controlled your own attention? When was the last time you saw something that provoked you and simply walked away? You couldn't, could you? Because offense is addictive. It gives you a sense of righteousness. It makes you feel alive, important, justified. That's why they keep feeding it to you, spoonful after spoonful. Every insult, every argument, every viral outrage, it's a hook. And you keep biting, thinking you're fighting back. But all you're doing is reacting. And when you react, they rule. The truth is brutal. Modern society has trained you to be weak, not through oppression, but through validation. It rewards fragility. It applauds outrage. It glorifies emotional instability as authenticity. You've been told that your emotions are sacred, that expressing them is power. But the more you express, the more predictable you become. And predictability is the death of power. Because when the world can guess how you'll react, it owns you. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He knew that power lies not in emotion, but in perception. The ruler who can remain calm while others rage becomes godlike because he controls not only himself, but the entire emotional landscape around him. And today's manipulators, the digital kings, the corporate princes, they understand that same law. They don't conquer through strength. They conquer through your feelings. Every scandal, every trending controversy, every carefully engineered moral outrage, it's not about truth. It's about attention. It's about control. And you are the product. They discovered the perfect formula. Outrage divides. Division distracts. And distraction prevents rebellion. The more easily offended the population becomes, the safer those in power remain. Because emotional people don't question systems, they attack each other. They fight over words, over symbols, over opinions, while the real power moves unseen, untouched, unchallenged. And every time you take the bait, every time you react, you strengthen the very hands that keep you weak. This is the genius of modern control. They've turned emotional fragility into a badge of honor. They've convinced you that sensitivity is strength, that tears are courage, that outrage is virtue. But in reality, sensitivity is vulnerability, and vulnerability is opportunity for those who know how to use it. The world doesn't respect the man who cries the loudest. It respects the man who stays silent while everyone else screams. Because silence is not weakness, it's strategy. And strategy, not emotion, wins wars. Every empire, every political campaign, every movement that manipulates emotion has one goal: control the narrative by controlling how you feel. Because emotion shapes perception, and perception shapes reality. If they can make you feel angry, they can direct your anger. If they can make you feel hurt, they can point your pain at a target. If they can make you feel righteous, they can convince you to destroy anyone labeled wrong. And when that happens, they don't even need to fight you. You'll fight yourself and each other. You'll become both the soldier and the battlefield. Understand this: when everyone is offended, no one is thinking. When everyone is reacting, no one is strategizing. And when no one is strategizing, the game is over for everyone except the ones who set the trap. That's the true weaponization of sensitivity. So what's the solution? How do you escape the trap? You detach. You stop reacting. You stop feeding the machine with your attention. You stop caring about insults, opinions, and digital wars. You stop defending yourself from ghosts. Because every reaction you don't give starves the system that feeds on you. Every moment you remain calm, you reclaim a piece of your sovereignty. You don't win by arguing louder. You win by going silent. Because silence is not surrender, it's dominance. The world wants you emotional. The world wants you reactive. The world wants you offended. Because an offended man is a slave. But a detached man, a man who cannot be provoked, that man is dangerous. That man is free. So when the next outrage appears before you, the next insult, the next attack, smile in silence. Because you already know what it is. Another leash. Another trap. Another test. And this time, you won't take the bait. You think your emotions belong to you. But they don't. They've been designed, engineered, constructed with surgical precision by architects you'll never see. Every outrage, every controversy, every sudden wave of collective anger, none of it is random. It's architecture, a psychological design, built to keep you predictable, distracted, and divided. Machiavelli once said, "The wise ruler keeps his people occupied with spectacles." 5 centuries later, those spectacles are no longer gladiator fights or royal parades. They are headlines. They are tweets. They are viral wars of words that infect the mind like a virus. And the purpose is the same as it was in his time control. Here's how it works. Step 1. Trigger emotion. The architects of power understand something most people never will. Humans are not logical. They are emotional creatures pretending to be rational. And when emotions rise, logic disappears. They craft stories designed not to inform, but to provoke. Not to enlighten, but to inflame. A single headline, exaggerated, framed, repeated, becomes a spark. That spark spreads across millions of screens, igniting emotional wildfire. And just like that, the masses are no longer thinking. They're feeling. And feelings can be steered. Step 2. Direct the emotion. When the fire is lit, it must be aimed. So they give you a villain, a scapegoat, someone to hate, to blame, to destroy. It doesn't matter who. It can be a politician, a celebrity, a corporation, a group, even an idea. What matters is that your anger has direction, because anger with direction can be harvested. While you burn with rage, while you argue, while you scream, they move. They pass laws. They seize influence. They reshape economies, all while you're too busy fighting shadows to notice the hands behind the curtain. This is not conspiracy. This is design. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he warned, "A ruler must understand how to deceive the minds of men." He didn't mean lies. He meant control of perception, control of emotion, because the man who controls emotion controls truth itself. And in the modern world, truth is not discovered, it's manufactured. Step 3. Monetize the outrage. Here's the genius of the system. They've made outrage profitable. Every angry click, every furious comment, every second you spend raging online, it feeds the machine. The platforms measure your engagement, feed it into their algorithms, and show you more of what makes you react. Why? Because the more emotional you are, the longer you stay. And the longer you stay, the more ads they sell. You're not the customer. You're the product. Your emotions are the currency. They've turned the human nervous system into an economy. And outrage is the new gold. Step 4. Divide and weaken. This is where the architects of outrage reveal their true mastery. They understand a simple law of power: a united people cannot be controlled, but a divided people will destroy themselves. And what better way to divide than through offense? Offense splits the mind into tribes. You pick sides. You pick enemies. And slowly, your world shrinks until all you can see are threats. They make you believe that anyone who disagrees with you is evil. They make you hate your neighbor over words. They make you loyal not to truth, but to emotion. And in doing so, they make you predictable. Because the offended man doesn't think he reacts. And when he reacts, he becomes programmable. Think about the last time you were outraged. Do you remember how it felt? That rush of adrenaline? That heat in your chest? That certainty that you were right and they were wrong? That feeling, that illusion of moral superiority is the most dangerous drug in the world. Because it makes you feel powerful while making you easier to control. And that's the cruel genius of it. They've made slavery feel like strength. Step 5. Repeat. Keep the cycle spinning until it becomes invisible. Outrage becomes the air you breathe. Anger becomes identity. And soon, you can't even tell when you're being manipulated. You'll think you're making choices, but in truth, your choices were already predicted, modeled, and prepared for you. The only thing left is your reaction, and they already own that. This is the architecture of outrage. A palace built from human weakness. A system so perfect it no longer needs chains because the prisoners police themselves. Machiavelli once wrote that men are driven by two principal impulses, love and fear. But in our age, there's a third, outrage. It's not driven by instinct, it's manufactured by design. Because outrage is the perfect tool for modern rulers. It doesn't just control the body, it controls the mind. It divides, distracts, and derails. And it ensures that no matter how much noise the people make, they never actually change anything. Because outrage without strategy is impotence. So how do you fight back? How do you escape the architecture of manipulation? You do what Machiavelli himself would advise. You step outside the game. You stop reacting. You stop letting emotion dictate your perception. When the masses rage, you watch. When the world screams, you stay silent. When everyone fights over illusions, you plan in the shadows. Because while others burn, the strategist builds. Understand this law. Every time you react emotionally, someone else wins. Every time you stay calm, someone else loses power over you. The man who remains silent while the crowd loses its mind, he's already won. Because he can see what they cannot, the hands that move the strings. And that's why silence, detachment, and observation are not just traits of strength, they are survival tactics in an age of mass manipulation. The modern battlefield isn't land or sea. It's perception. It's outrage. It's your mind. And the only way to win this war is to refuse to fight the wrong battles. Outrage is the weapon of the weak. Control is the armor of the strong. And emotional silence is the sword of kings. Stay calm. Stay strategic. Stay dangerous. Every manipulation begins in the same place, your emotions. Before anyone controls your actions, your thoughts, or your beliefs, they must first learn to control how you feel. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He knew that people don't act based on truth. They act based on perception, and perception is born from emotion. Control the emotion, and you control the mind. Control the mind, and you control the man. Control enough men, and you control the world. In this part, we step into the psychology of control, the hidden mechanics behind every manipulation tactic ever designed. It doesn't matter whether it's a ruler controlling his subjects, a corporation shaping consumers, or a toxic person influencing your life. They all use the same structure, the same psychological blueprint. And it begins with one word: leverage. To control someone, you don't need force. You need leverage, emotional leverage. The moment they know what makes you angry, what makes you insecure, what makes you crave approval, they own you. You've handed them the keys to your behavior. Because once your emotions are predictable, so are your reactions. And a predictable person can be moved like a chess piece. Let's break down the tools of emotional manipulation one by one. Tool 1. Fear. Fear is the oldest weapon in the history of control. When you fear loss, rejection, or humiliation, you'll do anything to avoid it. Rulers use it through threats. Corporations use it through scarcity. People use it through silence and withdrawal. Fear narrows your focus. It kills perspective. It reduces a complex mind to a single instinct: survival. And when you're in survival mode, you don't question, you obey. That's why fear is not just an emotion. It's a leash. Tool 2. Guilt. If fear makes you obey, guilt makes you submit. Manipulators use guilt as invisible punishment. They make you feel responsible for their pain, their anger, their disappointment. They twist morality into a weapon. You start apologizing for things you never did wrong. You start carrying emotions that don't even belong to you. And the more guilt you absorb, the weaker you become, because guilt consumes energy, confidence, and self-trust. The moment you accept guilt that isn't yours, you stop being free. Tool 3. Validation. This is the most seductive trap. Every manipulator knows that people crave approval. We want to be seen, understood, and accepted. It's a natural human need, and they weaponize it. They praise you when you serve their agenda. They withdraw when you resist. They build your self-worth around their reactions. And once you depend on their validation, you'll chase it endlessly, like a gambler chasing his next win. They won't need to threaten or punish you. You'll police yourself to stay in their favor. That's the beauty of this control. You become your own jailer. Tool 4. Hope. This one is more dangerous than fear. Because while fear keeps you still, hope keeps you waiting. Manipulators promise change, apology, or reward, but only after you do what they want. They keep you in emotional debt with the illusion of future payoff. You keep believing that if you just stay loyal, if you just prove yourself, if you just endure a little longer, things will get better. But they never do. Hope becomes a leash of light, soft, invisible, but unbreakable. And you call it patience. Every manipulator, every ruler, every system that controls people, they all master these tools. Fear, guilt, validation, hope. With these 4, they can shape entire civilizations. They can make good people defend bad systems. They can make slaves love their chains. And here's the Machiavellian truth. Most people don't want freedom because freedom requires emotional strength. They prefer the comfort of control, the safety of obedience, the predictability of being told what to do. Because freedom means responsibility, and responsibility terrifies the weak. So how do you break free from emotional control? You master the one skill that makes manipulation impossible: emotional neutrality. This is not numbness, it's awareness. It's the ability to feel without obeying the feeling, to observe emotion without becoming it. Machiavelli would call this the ruler's mind. When a ruler sees anger rising among his people, he doesn't panic. He studies it. He asks, who caused it? Who benefits from it? How can I redirect it? That's how you must deal with your own emotions as a strategist, not as a victim. When you feel anger, don't react, analyze it. When you feel guilt, ask, who profits from my guilt? When you feel fear, ask, what threat is real and what was planted? When you feel hope, ask, who wants me to keep waiting? Every emotion has a source. Every reaction has a designer. And the moment you trace it back to its origin, you break the illusion of control, because the manipulator's greatest power is your blindness. Once you see, they lose their hold. This is the real war, not for land, not for wealth, but for the emotional sovereignty of the human mind. The world doesn't need more warriors with swords. It needs warriors of awareness. Men and women who cannot be emotionally hijacked by fear, guilt, or validation. Because the calm mind is ungovernable, and an ungovernable mind is the only true form of rebellion left. Remember this law. He who controls your emotions controls your behavior. He who controls your behavior controls your destiny. But if you control your emotions, you control everything. That's why silence terrifies manipulators. That's why calm enrages them. Because silence means they've lost their weapon, your reaction. You don't need to fight them. You only need to stop reacting to them. Because every manipulator depends on noise, and the moment you go silent, they face themselves. And that's a battle they always lose. So be slow to react. Be slower to explain. And never let anyone make you feel what serves their purpose. Feel, but do not obey the feeling. See, but do not be seen reacting. Know, but do not show that you know. Because control is not in domination. Control is an emotional mastery. And mastery is the birth of power. There comes a point when awareness isn't enough. Knowing the trap doesn't free you. To survive in a world built on manipulation, you must learn to fight fire with precision. You must turn emotion itself into a weapon. Machiavelli never taught peace, he taught power through perception. He taught that to rule the world, you must understand it not as it pretends to be, but as it truly is, a battlefield of psychology. And in this war, those who react lose. Those who read win. This is emotional warfare. Not chaos, not cruelty, but strategy. The art of turning manipulation back on the manipulator. You've already learned how the world uses offense and outrage to weaken you. Now, it's time to reverse the equation. Because power doesn't come from resisting emotion. It comes from directing it. Your emotions are not enemies, they're weapons. But only if you wield them, instead of letting others wield them for you. To do this, you must master 3 psychological reversals, 3 counter strategies that transform defense into dominance. Reversal 1. Emotional inversion. When someone tries to provoke you, they expect a reaction. They thrive on your visible emotion. It feeds their power. So when they strike, you invert it. You remain silent, calm, almost amused. You let their attack hang in the air unanswered, forcing them to feel the weight of their own projection. This silence creates dissonance. They expected heat, they meet ice. They wanted chaos, they find control. And now, their energy collapses inward. Because manipulators feed on your emotion, starve them, and they suffocate. Reversal 2. Controlled confusion. Most manipulators rely on clarity. They want to know how you'll react, what you'll say, where your limits are. That predictability is their map. So you take it away. You become unreadable. Your responses become unpredictable, sometimes direct, sometimes vague, sometimes detached. They cannot calculate you. They cannot anticipate you. You don't give them consistency, you give them mystery. Because in psychological warfare, confusion is control. The one who must constantly interpret you is already beneath you. Machiavelli himself said, "Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. For everyone can see, but few can feel." When they can no longer see your intent, they begin to fear your silence. And fear, once planted, grows roots. Reversal 3. Strategic reflection. Every manipulator reveals themselves through projection. They accuse you of what they are guilty of. They insult you with what they secretly feel. They describe themselves, thinking they are describing you. So, instead of defending yourself, reflect. Not by arguing, but by letting their words expose them. When someone calls you selfish, they are revealing their greed. When they call you cold, they are confessing their weakness. When they say you've changed, it means you've stopped serving their illusion. Don't resist projection, observe it. Every insult is data. Every accusation is a mirror. Once you understand this, no one can humiliate you again, because humiliation only exists when you mistake the projection for truth. You must learn to play the manipulator's game better than they do, not emotionally, but tactically. They want to drag you into chaos, don't enter. They want to pull you into guilt, don't engage. They want to define you, don't defend. The less you explain, the more powerful you become. Every moment you stay calm in the face of attack, you're not just surviving, you're training them to fear your stillness. Because the calm person in chaos always looks like the one in control. And that illusion, that aura of composure, is the beginning of real dominance. Machiavelli would have told you, power isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about making them destroy themselves, trying to reach you. That's emotional warfare. You let their energy burn them, not you. You use their expectations against them, their temper, their pride, their desire to win the argument. You win not by fighting, but by making them reveal who they truly are. Because when you expose a manipulator's emotional dependency, when you show that their control only works if you react, you dismantle their power. And the moment they realize they can no longer move you, they collapse. Let's look deeper. Every manipulator depends on emotional timing they attack, when you're weakest, when you're tired, uncertain, insecure. So your defense isn't constant resistance. It's self-mastery. You learn your triggers. You study your emotional patterns the way a general studies terrain. You know when you're vulnerable and you never give them that window. Because once you become aware of your emotional map, no one can ambush you. That's how you move from being a target to being a strategist. This is the final truth of emotional warfare. You don't win by fighting people. You win by mastering yourself. You become the still center in a spinning world. You let others waste energy chasing illusions while you conserve yours for what truly matters: strategy, purpose, movement. And when you act with precision, not from impulse, not from outrage, but from calculation. Because power is never loud. Power is measured, deliberate, silent. When you stop reacting, manipulators panic. They will test you, provoke, accuse, guilt trip, mock, anything to make you react. Because your reaction is proof of control. But when they find nothing, when you look at them with calm indifference, they crumble under the weight of their own desperation. And that's when the dynamic reverses. They start reacting to you. Their emotions become unstable. They become the predictable one. They become the pawn. That's the moment you've won the psychological war. Machiavelli once wrote that the wise must learn not to be good, not in the moral sense, but in the emotional sense. He meant, do not let your virtue become your weakness. Do not let empathy become your leash. Do not let reaction become your ruin. The world rewards those who can manipulate emotion, but it bows to those who master it. So when others use emotion as a weapon, you use silence as your shield. When they play offense, you play patience. When they seek reaction, you offer indifference. Because nothing is more terrifying to a manipulator than someone who cannot be moved. This is emotional warfare. The highest form of combat fought not with swords, but with silence. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. The manipulator's greatest victory is reaction. Your greatest victory is calm. Stay unreadable. Stay unmoved. Stay dangerous. They tried to offend you. They tried to provoke you. They tried to make you dance to their rhythm. And when you stayed silent, when you didn't flinch, they began to fear you. Because the one who cannot be moved cannot be controlled. This is the final transformation. The final stage in your evolution. You are no longer playing defense. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer chained to the chaos of the world. You've become something higher, something Machiavelli himself understood, but few ever achieve. You've become untouchable. The untouchable mind is not emotionless. It feels everything, but nothing rules it. Pain passes through it. Insults dissolve inside it. Chaos moves around it, never within it. Machiavelli once warned rulers, "The man who depends on the will of others to survive will always be ruled." But what he didn't say outright was this, that emotional dependence is the worst kind of slavery. It's not chains on your hands. It's chains on your mind. And the key to breaking them? Detachment. Not the cold indifference of the bitter, but the disciplined detachment of the powerful. The kind that lets you see clearly, act precisely, and remain unshaken while everyone else drowns in noise. Detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop clinging. It means you no longer hand your power to the opinions, insults, or validation of others. The world wants you emotional because emotion is predictable. They want you attached because attachment is leverage. They want you to react because reaction is obedience. But when you detach, truly detach, you take back your sovereignty. You stop chasing approval. You stop defending yourself. You stop explaining your choices. You move through the world like a shadow, untouchable, unreadable, unbreakable. Think of the most powerful men in history: emperors, strategists, kings, CEOs, conquerors. What do they all have in common? Not rage, not fear, not sensitivity. Composure. When chaos erupted around them, they became still. When the world screamed, they whispered. When others broke down, they calculated. That's not natural. That's trained. It is the byproduct of mastering one thing: the ability to detach from emotion while remaining connected to outcome. You still care about the result, but not about the noise surrounding it. You still move with purpose, but not with panic. You still plan, but never plead. Let me tell you something brutal, but true. Most people will never reach this level of power because they love their pain too much. They find identity in being offended. They find comfort in being emotional. They confuse being loud with being strong. They mistake reaction for relevance. They believe that feeling deeply is the same as living deeply, but they are wrong. Feeling is easy. Control is rare, and the rare become rulers. To become untouchable, you must train yourself in 3 disciplines. First, the discipline of observation. You must see before you speak. Watch everything. Everyone reveals themselves in what they react to. Learn people's triggers, study their tone, note their timing. The one who observes silently has already won half the battle. Second, the discipline of distance. Not every battle deserves your sword. Not every insult deserves your attention. You must learn to walk away without emotion. Because walking away is not weakness, it's war by other means. It's denying them the satisfaction of control. Third, the discipline of stillness. In a world addicted to chaos, stillness is rebellion. Stillness terrifies the emotional because it exposes their instability. When they can't shake you, they start to question themselves. And that's how power shifts, quietly, invisibly, permanently. Machiavelli said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally," meaning the fool reacts, the wise act. The fool speaks, the wise watch. The fool offends, the wise observe. The untouchable mind operates from foresight, not impulse. It predicts moves, anticipates manipulation, and dismantles it before it begins. And the moment you master this, the world's weapons no longer work on you. Because the world's sharpest weapon is emotion. If it can't move you, it can't cut you. They will call you cold. They will call you emotionless. They will say, "You've changed." But what they really mean is, they can no longer control you. They can no longer predict you. They can no longer pull your strings. And that frightens them. Because when a man becomes detached, he becomes free. And freedom terrifies the enslaved. You've now learned what the masses never will. Offense is a leash. Reaction is a cage. Attachment is a trap. Detach, and the game ends. You stop being a piece on the board. You become the player. You become the strategist, the observer, the ruler of your own inner kingdom. And from that stillness, you begin to shape reality itself. Machiavelli once wrote that men are driven by 2 things: fear and ambition. The untouchable mind transcends both. It no longer fears loss because it's detached. It no longer craves approval because it's complete. It no longer seeks control over others because it has mastered control over itself. That is the highest level of power self-mastery. The man who rules himself rules everything. The man who controls his reactions controls every room he walks into. The man who cannot be offended cannot be manipulated. He doesn't chase dominance, he embodies it. He doesn't fight for peace, he is peace. And that peace is terrifying to those who live in chaos. So here's the final truth. You lose the moment you react. You win the moment you observe. You ascend the moment you detach. This is not about being heartless. It's about being sovereign. It's about owning your emotions so completely that no one can weaponize them against you. When they provoke, you watch. When they insult, you smile. When they plot, you plan. When they rage, you remain still. Because stillness is not silence, it's strength. And silence is not weakness, it's control. Now, the world will keep testing you. It will tempt you to react, to rage, to prove, to defend. But you must remember you've already won the invisible war. Every second you remain composed, you're rising above the collective hysteria. Every breath you take in silence is a declaration of power. Every moment you choose calm over chaos, you're declaring your independence from manipulation. You are no longer controlled by the noise of the herd. You are the silence that commands it. Stay silent. Stay cold. Stay dangerous. Because when nothing offends you, you own yourself. And when you own yourself, you rule the game.